Welcome to Legacy Conversations, a channel where we preserve military memories and history.
Hello Internet, I'm excited here because for the first time in about 3 episodes, I actually get the chance to speak to Peter Baxter. Now you will remember we had an episode with him, I think Fossey made it. Very interesting, Rhodesian Army officer, and then he came south. He actually passed the Recce Selection, and then he said no, for some reason, he can explain himself. And then he joined 101 Battalion where he became quite famous. Now guys, we are busy here with what I call the weapons type of equipment type of series on Legacy, because it's good to hear a man's story. I love to hear the stories. It's 99% of what we do. But I was thinking there might be some children and people listening here. We don't know the equipment we use that well. And so we made the first episode, the R1 and the R4 rifle. It went very well. Want to thank all of you for your comments, things like that. We had great fun. And we're going to record another one with the same two gents about platoon support weapons, which is the 106 and the mortars and the machine guns and things like that. It's going to be an eye-opener. I'm still looking for a Casspir somewhere. I want to do a detailed thing on a Casspir as well, if I can find one, because that was a marvelous vehicle. Let me tell you, I was a Casspir driver of note, man. I was a great Casspir driver. I say that without any hesitation. But then I recall to myself that we really need to understand the different units, to understand what weapons were used, a little bit of what tactics were used. And this was dealt with in an episode which came out again with Peter and 101 Battalion and Fossey. They made a video on that as well. But I want to know what weapons were used, and I also want to know the sleeping bags. Let me explain why the sleeping bags, because, man, I'm really not into the Brokeback Mountain or what's that crap. You know, that movie of humping whales or whatever you call it. I'm not into that. I'm not saying any further, but I cannot be cold enough to leopold there with a mate of mine. That's never going to happen with me. I'll rather annoy the sergeant so he takes me around, I get warm. That works for me. But I soon found out that the South African Police Force coin units, the equipment was designed in Rhodesia. And therefore, it was fantastic, but it was so most horribly not suitable to South African conditions. It was just cold, man. We did not have enough warm clothes. It was horrible. And our sleeping bags were from the same place, I suppose. I mean, it was just bad, man. I mean, if you were deployed in the South African borders to a place like Lesotho, we were needed because there were farm attacks. There were the ANC trying to get into the country. We were doing a counterinsurgency, counter-terrorism things there. It got so cold that you actually saw the Casspir standing in the snow. And you see these policemen are huddling like this around a fire, you know, they're like really, really cold. And then Peter said to me off, and he said, man, you know, the sleeping bags in Rhodesia, same story. But let us first start. Peter, can you give us a little background of yourself, please? And welcome here. Thank you for coming to the show. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Nice to talk to you at last. Appreciate it. I wasn't a legend at 101, right? There are a lot more famous guys than me at 101 Battalion. I'm just trying to tell the story of what a great unit it was. Introduction, I was born in Rhodesia in 1962. I went into the Rhodesian Army, or the end, 1979. I was too young to join. So I ended up on an officer's course, did the officer's course. I served with the RAR. After that was done, I then moved on to training officers at the Zimbabwe Military Academy eventually. Then that was untenable. I left there. I went to 121 Battalion for a couple of years, 3.5 years. After that, well, during that, I did Recce Selection. And everyone asked me, why did I say no? Well, I was a 19-year-old two-pip lieutenant, and they wanted me to be a corporal first. So I said, no, thanks. And moved on. And then once I finished at 121, I went and did a bit of Civvy Street for a while. And then 87, I got the hankering again. And I went to 101 Battalion. And that's basically what my history was. 101 Battalion was a great experience, as was the RAR. And my training was incredible. So to talk about the sleeping bags, which is one thing that you mentioned. All right. The sleeping bags in Rhodesia were horrendous. They were these very thin nylon little things that, yes, you could carry it around and you could get into it. It was more of a mosquito deterrent than it was cold deterrent. And although it didn't get that cold, where I was based in Enyanga, it got freezing cold because of the high mountains. So like the Drakensberg, like Lesotho Mountains. So they were terrible. When I went to 101, I'd had the mispleasure of using the SADF sleeping bags as well, which were not great either. I think they were 1938 design, and you had an inner and an outer and a whatever else, and it was heavy as hell, and when it got wet, it was terrible. So when I went to 101, I bought myself a 3 Spears sleeping bag. And the 3 Spears sleeping bag with 2 of those nice heavy grey woolen blankets on top of you. It didn't matter that it was -13 in the bush in Angola South. So that's how we survived. Again, like you talk about the fires, we used to light fires at night to attract the tours. The idea was to get them to attack us so we could go and shoot them and kill them the next day. So that relates to that, all right? The other question you asked was 101 based on Kufut? I believe the answer is yes. And the reason I say it's yes, because the Kufut guys were lucky enough to have access to the Casspirs straight off, where the 101 guys ended up using buffels at the beginning. And the difference between the two that I can assimilate, and I'm not an expert, right? I'm just telling you my view and my opinion of it, is that the Kufut guys would normally work in 2 teams together. And if there was a big fight, they would then come and maybe 2 or 3 others would join them. We in Transverse worked almost entirely in Angola we did work entirely in Angola during the year I was with 101. And we worked in company strength. So you would have company commander vehicle, you'd have the company sergeant major's vehicle, you'd have 4 Querfels as logistics, you'd have a big diesel Bowser that was running around behind us, 10,000 liters of diesel normally, and you had your 16 Casspirs. Each team had 4 Casspirs. And of course, they were heavily armed. The more you could put on them, the better it was. So one of the things I'm going to do for Forsey later on is I've got a whole lot of pictures which he wants me to put into like a video format and talk through. And one of those is pictures by Stephen Bortma of one of the Romeo Mikes armories. So our troops always took their rifles home. We never had our troops leave their rifles in with us. They always took them home wherever they went on vacation or leave or whatever you want to call it, PTO. I mean, I'm so American now, it's PTO and leave and whatever else. But they always took it with them. So your armory was basically the 3.0 Brownings, the MAGs, the 5.0 Brownings, and if you had a 20mm cannon or any other fancy thing that sat inside it. All right. So I think that should allow a little bit to the thing. Yes, it was Kufut tactics copied, but expanded to be on a military type basis. So example, in 87, before I got there, they attacked Mongua, 101 did. And that was done with, I think, 3 companies, somewhere around there. I wasn't there, so I can't speak to it completely. But then if you're doing that sort of thing, you need to have 16 Casspirs in a row running up at the enemy, not 4 of them or not 8 of them. So I think that's how it is. And the adaptation was a lot based off that. We learned a whole lot from the Kufut guys. And then when we got into Angola, we had to adapt again to other things. I mean, we used to hunt the Su-22s and the MiGs by going and burning tires in the middle of Shaunas and sitting with SAM 7s waiting for them to fly over and try and shoot them down. So that was something I haven't told in my last few interviews. Okay, but at the end of the day, the whole thing goes back to weapon craft and what you do. And funnily enough, I've got 5 or 6 pages of notes, but I write very big, so don't worry, we're not going to be 2 hours, all right? And the very last note that I have at the end was I got into 101, and on the Monday before we went out into the bush, they took us out to the Panikis factors and said, right, you guys need to test the machine guns and all that. And one of the Casspirs still had just the old single MAG with the bicycle wheel mount. And the troops came up to me and they told me, Lieutenant, this thing is a piece of crap. It don't work. It doesn't shoot. It's not very good. And I sat there and said, come guys, has anyone taught you actually how to use an MAG? So we sat down and we opened up the gas regulator, pulled it out. The thing was so worn that it just unwound by itself as you shot. So what I taught them was you take a piece of 9-gauge wire and you wrap it around the barrel, and that holds the gas regulator fully open. We put 500 rounds through it, and they all looked at me and said, how? How did this work? It's like, add oil, add wire on the gas regulator, you're done. That thing will work. Anyhow, that particular Caspir was changed out fairly quickly after that and got twin 3.0 Brownings. But that's just one of the things. So going back to this, I think one of the things that struck me was the two colonels did a pretty good job of telling us about the training and the dash down, crawl sights, observe fire and all that sort of thing. But I want to add a couple of more practical points to it, okay? So I was trained on the FN, FAL, Rhodesian R1, great rifle. If you know how to look after it and you know what to do with it, it'll do anything that you want. And I then worked with the R4s, but also during my training in School of Infantry in Gwelo, I did 106s, 81 more mortars, 61 more mortars, talk-ons of hunters, talk-ons of lynxes, all that sort of thing. So it was a very comprehensive course, which stood us in good stead. And I've brought that out before where we were using 106s on Casspirs outside on Jiva. But going back to the R1 and R4 and the Galil and the G3 for an example, because I know you want to talk a little bit about that as well. So the initial, I'm not an total historian, okay? But the German army made 5,000 STG-44s. Those 5,000 were supplied to the German paratroopers, their elite soldiers, in late 1944. Those, a couple of them were captured by the Russians. And that's how Kalashnikov got his design. He took the STG-44 and he took all the fancy stuff. So the Germans are too finicky, right? I own a Luger pistol. It's a horrible shooting pistol, right? Not a great machine, but it's such a legend. Everyone wants to buy one. But the STG-44 had a whole lot of really good capabilities, like the intermediate cartridge. It was called the 7.69 millimeter. They used Kurtz, Kurtz, and that was the cartridge that they used for that. It was an intermediate. It was designed as an assault rifle. Off that, Kalashnikov copied a whole lot of all that and came out with the most stunning rifle, of which something like 120 million have been made around the world, somewhere around there. So that's to give you the idea of how the AK developed. The R4 was developed by taking an AK and an R1 and picking the two best capabilities of each and throwing them together in one thing. So let's take an example. A straight 20-round box magazine is a pain in the ass to reload, and its springs always go loose, and there's always a problem somewhere along the line, where the AK curved magazine gave you a good feed and really ran pretty well. So that was one of the main things. The second one was the way that the gas regulator worked and the way the rotating bolt worked. So they picked out all the best of all the bits and pieces and put it together. The one problem that I think that they've discovered with the Galil is it's too expensive to make compared to the new M4 AR-15 platform rifles that are around. So I think that's one of the reasons you don't see so many more or so many Galils in the Israeli combat theater right now. But that's a logical thing. All right. I had the pleasure of also working with troops who had G3s. So in Rhodesia, the Portuguese sold us a really sorry bunch of G3s, and that's what got issued to a lot of the new troops in the independent companies. So from about 1978 onwards, all of the old Rhodesia regiment companies were badged RAR, and they were flooded with recruits from depot RAR, and all of them were trained on G3s. So that was where I got some exposure on it. Major Andre Dennison, who was a really well-known company commander of A Company 2 RAR, he occasionally used a G3 just to prove to the troops that at the end of the day, you know, it's a weapon. It does the same job. It's a little bit more tinny than an R1, but that's fine. And I remember a picture of him in his book standing there with this funny bush hat thing on and his G3 up in the air and his one eye sighted over it. And, you know, when you get that, that's showing by example. So I did a little bit of that with him, but I also learned how to shoot a G3 because we had guard force at my father's hotel. So I grew up at the Zimbabwe Ruins Hotel. First was Shepherd's Hotel over the valley. 1974, the terrorists burned that down. Then we bought Zimbabwe Ruins Hotel. And then I grew up there, but I was at boarding school, so I'd only be there for 3 months of the year. And the Guard Force guys, also, when they would go shooting, they'd take me with them. So I'd go and learn and see. And while I was there, I carried a 303, which was a Lee Metford action with a Bisley barrel. And I would carry 10 magazines with that. So I had 100 rounds. Everyone said to me, "You're nuts." I said, "It's better than nothing, better than nothing." I was one of the school kids who escorted the buses to and from town when we went to Salisbury for weekends. And most of the masters were terrified. They were given automatic shotguns. They didn't know the front, the back, the side, or anything of it. But I learned to shoot with that 303. It was the old one with the brass butt and all of that sort of thing. So, everybody slates the G3. When I did Recce Selection, the other 140 guys all had G3s, and I had an R1. That was it. And there were no issues. Nothing happened. We used a different weapon because we used the Beretta AR-70 at the time. There weren't enough R4s to go into recce's for the training at it. And I'm just trying to put practicals into here so that people understand weapon training is an art and it's a passion. So when I was working with the Zulus, a Major Boertis came along to us a couple of times, and he came and stood around a few days while I was doing, range drills with the company that I was with at the time. And he walked up to me and said, "Peter," he said, "you have an absolute talent for teaching Africans how to shoot." He said, "because the normal is they just close their eyes and pull the trigger, but somehow you've got them into something else." Well, Major Boertis was incredible. I watched him with a 303 rifle, 10 rounds, all went into the bull faster than an FN or an R1 could fire at single shot. He was incredible. What a nice guy. And I believe him and Commandant Waterfall had worked together for years as well. And that's where the whole pretext of the training thing about not giving the guys an Opniak array on the way to the range came from. Because the whole problem with doing that is as soon as they heard shooting range or skit barn, that was it. They went into reverse. They didn't want to learn anything. They knew they were just going to get the snivels beaten out of them on the way, And the whole problem behind that was they then didn't want to learn and they didn't want to become good shots or anything. Where what we did was we tried in the transverse to turn around and say, right, we're going to run to the range, but there's no sandbag PT and anything on the way. When you get there, you'll have a rest, and then we're going to go and shoot and do what you do. And yes, my 9mm occasionally came out to move a few lazy asses, but that was just how it was. The whole thing behind it was to teach them how to shoot. So I was very lucky in the fact that my first pellet gun I had at the age of 6 or 7 years old. I learned to shoot off that, doves and whatever else. At the age of 14, I bought my first 22 rifle, which I still have today. It's a Creco bolt action. And from that, I learned how to teach people to shoot. So at the end of the day, it's just a talent for being able to do it. There's some guys who can do it, and there's some guys who can't. But also the teaching of the platform. That was more important than anything else. And I don't think a lot of people realized how important that was. Your breathing, your squeezing the trigger, following the shot through. Everybody turns around and says, "That's BS." That's not BS. That's how you can shoot straight. I didn't shoot Bisley, but I went a few times to Hammersdale Range, and I went and shot there, and I could do a falling plate at 800 meters. No problem. I couldn't do it today because my eyes are getting worse. But the whole thing behind it is the teaching of people. But one of the biggest things that really astounds me, and America particularly hasn't got this right, is people are not shown what a bullet does. They don't understand how powerful that little projectile is, whether it's from a 9mm, 5.56, whether it's from anything along the way. The whole thing is inertia and impact. So one of the things that I started to teach my guys was we would take a 44-gallon drum of water, and you put a 44-gallon drum of water up, you hit that with an R1, bam, that thing jumps in the air nicely. You hit it with an MAG with about 40 rounds, and it does a dance. You do it with an R4, it does a dance, but in a slightly different way because of the inertia of the bullet. So as you know, and as you saw, there's that Ian McCollum thing where he did a test on 3 different items. I sent you the link. It's a cool video to watch. The only difference is that he used a 77 grain round for the 5.56 instead of the normal 55 grain. That would have made a lot of difference to what that can of water did at the end of the day. So that was something I tried to teach, was so that people figured out how dangerous a weapon was. The American shooting problem here is exactly that. It's caused by PlayStation, where they think you just walk up and you plug the guy with a syringe and he's fixed up and he starts walking again tomorrow. You know, it's like, no, that don't work, boys. This stuff, it hurts, and when it hits you, it's bad. So that was, you know, pretty much the start of where it all went. I've done many, many, many different weapons, so that's why I'm going to talk about the practicalities and different things. 30-round magazine. I have 8 of them for my FN in America. and they work. And I also have what's called a Halbeck compensator, which when you put that thing on the front, that barrel doesn't even move. All right? So it's a pretty cool machine. You had some of the Rhodesian guys who welded 2 together to get a 40, but it wasn't quite a 40 and it didn't really work that well. I also have a 10-round magazine. And the reason for the 10-round magazine is that if you walk with your rifle and they can't see a magazine on it, a lot of the guys think, oh, no, he's stupid. He's unarmed. You're not unarmed. He's got something going on. So that was a pretty big one. And as I say, I have a Halbeck compensator. It works damn well. Right. I also did the Bren, the 303 and the 762. The 762 was more in South Africa when I was at the Zulus. We didn't have MAGs originally in 82 and 83. So when we went on border duty in 83, we took Bren guns with us. And it wasn't bad. You know, a lot of guys hated the Bren gun because it was heavy and you had to have magazines, but everybody in the section could supply them if you had R1s. So that's how it worked. And that's what the logic process. The Bren is one of the most accurate machine guns that you will fire in any time, anywhere, and anyhow. All right. I've talked about the R1 on automatic, R4 on automatic. That's just a spray and pray to get out of trouble, really. We carried 50-round magazines on our rifles at 101 Battalion. It was a great initiator of a contact and a replier to a contact if you needed it. And it also meant that the troops didn't have to change 2 magazines in the time that you had the one on. So 50s were the preference in the vehicle first, and then they would change to the 35s. I've told you about the water barrels. 5.56, very interesting rifle as well. I have a Colt 6720, which I bought here in the US. We've shot 25,000 rounds through it, and the barrels, it's the bullets tumble now. Yep. So it still shoots, but it's it's not a sniper rifle anymore. The 7.62 gives you a very heavy punch, and I think that's one of the reasons that so many people like it. It'll go through a 2-foot tree. I showed my sons a couple of years ago here, and they were like, "Yeah, okay, straight through, like a knife through butter." All right. We used the AR-70, the Beretta AR-70 at the Recce's. Great rifle as well. 30-round magazine, not a 35, and it was just a great weapon. So it's a preference at the end of the day. For the coin war in the bush, in Ovambaland and all that, R4s was a great rifle. R1s were good, but they had a lot of sand problems. And also you had to carry a lot more ammunition to try and keep up with what went on. Again, resupply, very interesting. If you had 5.56 and MAGs, for the 101 guys in Kufur, it wouldn't have been a problem because you had the supply vehicles, the Blessbok or the Querful. So you were full up of ammo in there. But if you worked it out, if everybody had R4s, everybody could feed from each other's Querfuls. So it gave you a lot more flexibility. Your first line in Rhodesia, a trooper was about 250 rounds. So you carry 6 to 8 magazines and the balance in boxes around you. And on top of that, you carried 2 50-round MAG belts as well. That was your first line ammunition. With the R4, it was approximately 350 rounds altogether. So almost 10 full magazines at 35 rounds a pop. I'll talk a little bit about other items. So I have an old FN-FAL carry handle, the old rubber one, which has the sight adjuster on the front of it. And I have a couple of different sights, which I use here to interchange. It's a great sight adjusting tool, really, really good. Magazines wise, R1 10 round, 20, 30, and the 40 round and the home raids. R4 is a 35 and a 50. The 50 is an excellent magazine, but like the colonel said, it's the troops then try and stand a thing on the barrel and get sand in the barrels and all sorts of other funny things. In a Caspir, that was it. If you walk in patrol and you're carrying the rifle all the time, doesn't matter. That's what you need. All right. The Bren 20 and 30 round magazines, the 30s were brilliant in a Bren. They were really, really super smooth because it's feeding downwards. There's inertia driving it down. Right. I talked about us using the 7.62 Brownings on the Casspirs. That was good. We also used 5.0 Brownings. So most of the Casspirs at the end ended up with a window 3.0 Browning, a 3.0 on top, and a 5.0 or twin 3.0s on top. And that worked really well. And they were brilliant machine guns. Marksman training, very, very important. The two colonels touched on that as well. The point behind it is if you get guys to enjoy shooting, they'll actually do very well at it. And that's the real secret behind it. You know, small tips like when you're doing the dry firing exercises, you put a coin on top of the weapon so that when they squeeze the trigger, the coin won't fall off. When they pull the trigger, the coin will fall off, and you can teach them how to change that. All right. Basic training, one of the things that I found was the weapon efficiency gives you the edge. The whole extension of your body is incredible. So from about the age of 10 or 11, around there, I carried a rifle all the time. So if I went from my house to the reception at the hotel or anywhere, you carried a rifle. You just learned how to do it. That was just life. And I think that's a really important part of teaching soldiers how to do it and how to look after it. You make them have it all the time. It becomes an extension of the body. Magazine loading proficiency, really important. The Recce's are very good at making you do that and doing well. I mean, my weapon proficiency on that course was 92%. The marksmanship was terrible, but they kept giving us different rifles, so you never knew where it shot. You just pulled the trigger and moved on. Your rifle is an extension of your arm, and that's one of the reasons that the Rhodesian Army used pokey drill. So pokey drill was PT in the morning using your rifle, and you would swing it up and around and sideways, and guys thought this is a real pain in the ass. But what it did was teach you that your eyes follow the barrel all the time. So it's always interesting. You watch the movies, they don't follow the barrel all the time, right? The barrel's poked around here and the eyes are going over there. And I was like, oh, really? So that's one of the big reasons for pokey drill, and I was very effective at that. Rifle grenades. When we did Recce Selection, I was the only guy who had an R4. The other 140 guys had all G3s. They then decided we were doing rifle grenade practice, and everybody shot a rifle grenade off my R1. So that's quite a machine. I mean, that rifle did a damn lot of good. Talking about the weapons on automatic, the R4 is a lot easier to control, but it's not the best way of shooting. But again, when you start teaching your guys about Drake shooting and becoming the extension of their body, they start to learn where that round goes and what it does and how it does. Same as when you're teaching MAG gunners. MAG gunners, I mean, most of them who are really good, they'll put it up in their shoulder and they'll fire from there. But the majority will fire it from the hip, off the belt, over the shoulder. You've got to teach him how to let his eyes follow what's happening. First couple of rounds, that's your sighters, and then you start shooting. All right. I did a lot on semi-automatic shotguns. My dad had an Osana, Beretta A5s in the Rhodesian Army. South African Army, we didn't have any, but I had my own Franchi. I had a right gun, which I used to haul around. You were talking the one day about the weapons that might have been left in Rhodesia. There were many that were taken out, let me assure you. We used to get to the parade square at about 4:45 in the morning, and there would be these Samel hundreds and Queffel hundreds and Ratels and you name it, and they were just laden with boxes of Brens, MAGs, whatever we've been given. There was some left behind, yes, I agree. But the majority, I believe, was out. So that should clear some people's minds a little bit about it. MAG experience, I was a marksman on MAG as well. The nice thing about the MAG is the barrel, that you can interchange the barrel, and that makes it easy to use as many rounds as you can. I think I got up to about 1,800 rounds before we needed to change a barrel on one of them. But we didn't let it melt, you know. And I've got a pretty good picture of a red hot cooked one. Not bent, but straight. And then with the MAG, if you give someone 200 rounds, you'll have a great hole in a brick wall, like about 1 meter by 1 meter. And that'll show the people what it can actually do. It's one of the reasons that the Americans kept the M60, the pig, in their service, because originally they had the M14 when they got to Vietnam. So they had 7.62 for both weapons. And then the pig was the squad machine gun. And it was just so powerful for what they could do. So when they were fighting in the cities, that was really where it came into its fore. We've talked about penetration. You talked about the stopping power of an R4 versus an R1. Major Nortman, before I got to the Lomba River, him and Rian Labuskachny were going to go and rescue the one Ratel that had been shot out. And there was a Fapla troopie inside looting and grabbing all the rat packs and all the rations he could. And he'd fill his pack and he put it on his pack. And as Nortman got there, he took off like a scared hare. And Nortman fired 5 rounds at him and the guy didn't go down. Every round into his pack full of tins didn't go through. Very, very interesting. So quite that's why I'm trying to talk about is this practical side of things, what people will see and figure out and understand. If you go to the bullet grains, R4, you got 55, 62, 77. I think they've even got an 85 here in America. They've got an armor tipped round, a green round, which is quite a nasty thing. And with the R1s, normal NATO ammo is 147, I think. And then 168 grain is the hunting. That guy, when he did the test, he was using a 168 or more. I can't remember the exact number. I didn't go back and look at that. But that's another link you can put on for your guys to see, because that gives you a beautiful view of what those rifles do. The G3 we talked about. One of the reasons that the Portuguese used the G3 was that it was a cheap rifle. They had a lot of conscripts, so their guys were obliged to do 2 years all the time. That was it until 1974 when the revolution came. But they were clever because their G3s linked in with the HK-21 machine gun. So you could use the same bullets all the time. And that was what their whole thought behind it was. A couple of guys who used G3s, I told you about Denison. Another guy called Captain Bob Cox, who's an American engineer who was in the Rhodesian engineering squadrons. And he carried a G3, didn't want an FN. So nope, don't want that. I want that thing. So it was very, very interesting to see that. Guard Force used the G3s, the RAR used the G3s, the support and guarding people, so RDR, the Rhodesian Defense Regiment used G3s, etc., etc. It was just we were running out of money to buy FNs all the time. And then we also got the squeeze from PW. I was reading something today that is actually horrifying about what happened, but that's the way it went. One of the other things or problems that you had with the G3s was the broken butts and the broken stocks because of the plastic. They sort of redeveloped it. I know the South Africans called it the R2, something like that. And they developed a really nice front end stock for it that didn't break very easily. And the same on the back. But I mean, if the stock broke, you just got another one and put it on and moved on. That was simple as that. Broken cocking handles was another issue with the G3s. And a lot of guys would say they were junk. They weren't junk. It was better than having nothing. You could have had an old 303 rifle given to you, similar to what the police in Rhodesia originally used to carry, you know. So that wouldn't have been fair. Another pistol I used was the Star 9mm. When I went to A Company 3 RAL, they were independent companies, so they'd been given whatever came in. So Stars were what were prevalent there. When I went to Support Company, they had Browning high powers. But that Star was a brilliant little pistol. All the gun blue came off because it got wet in a leather holster, but it still carried on. It fired TER ammunition, R ammunition, whatever you threw at it, it just did. Really great pistol. Told you about Commandant Waterfall. One of the comments I really want to make was that everybody just giving the troops oppies on the way to the shooting range was such a waste of time. That was just so counterproductive to producing a great shot that my mind was blown by that. It was just really wow. You know, how do you actually logically think that you're going to teach somebody something when he's so tired that he doesn't want to do anything? Another way that I found for teaching people shooting is using a little BB gun first, then a pellet gun, then a 22 rifle, and then you get into the bigger stuff. And by doing that, you progress them because a lot of people actually have an inherent fear of weapons. Not so much South Africa and Rhodesia, but other parts of the world where people just don't know weapons, you know. Another weapon that we had a chance to use on the communist side was the Chicom Type 68. That's a copy of an AK, but a much better weapon than an AK. And then there was also the Gurunov medium machine gun, which was the same round as the PKM. That machine gun was awesome. It was pretty damn close to an MAG. They would have it mounted on this little two-wheel thing that they would pull along and on the outside. And when that thing started talking, you listened very quickly. Other items that we found were very good for training was jungle lane. It was excellent for teaching you instinctive shooting. So we started to try and get a lot more ingenious because it was just a pain having static targets walking down a bush lane and shooting at them. So we would spring them from behind trees. We had wires that they slid down from the top end to the bottom end, so you had to shoot the moving target. We had them mounted in tires, so they rolled down the hill and you had to try and shoot that. And we did them jungle lanes with R1s and with MAGs, so that they learnt instinctively how to point and how to do. Your whole teaching needs to be that where your finger points is where your whole weapon direction runs, and your eyes. The two must always run together. I've told you about pokey drill. Another one that the two colonels talked about was Drake shooting. We in Rhodesia enforced that a lot because by using FNs, you had a whole lot more power, and that bullet would throw all the rocks and sticks and all the stuff in the guy's face. And once he got that, he would normally jump up, and that's when you shot him. So that was the whole idea about Drake shooting. The weapon familiarity I've touched on already. I believe that it's got to become an extension of your hand, of your arms, whatever you want to talk about it. We grew up with weapons, so it's easy to do. So my wife always says to me, she says, "Man, you know, why are you not worried about these things? You leave them all over the house and whatever." I was like, I grew up with them. I know what they are. I know what to do, and I respect them. The problem today, they have none of that. They don't figure that out. And when you get them to a range, they're so shit scared they don't know what to do themselves. I've got a fair old collection, but I'm not going to talk about all that now. But I built myself a Galil here, and I used the local armory to do it. So they're pretty keen on me because it's like, wow, we've never built an Israeli type rifle before. And I bought a parts kit and a few bits and pieces and said, right, this is what you got to do. That was cool. And I have a whole lot of magazines for that, the 35 rounds and the 30 rounds, and I've got 350s as well. So there's a bit of a collection just in case these funny fellas who coming over the border do their thing. My first contact was in probably June of 1979, and my mom had a GM15, which is a copy of a Czechoslovakian, very crudely made submachine gun. Had a 32 round magazine, fully auto, and it was a pretty cool little weapon, I must be quite honest. So the one day the Guard Force guys were hanging around, my dad was in town, there was no one of authority to say to me, you stay in the hotel and all that. I said, let's go. We went for a walk, and about 2 kilometers from the hotel, there were 6 tours walking in their file, and you could see them from far away, you know, the white coats and the AK slung under the coat and the whole shooting match. So we had a bit of a contact with him, but it was quite a distance contact. So that GM15 was damn useless. And the G3s, they didn't get near them. But that was just part of the experience of life, you know, how you do it. I've told you about the 101 battalion and the gas regulator for the MAGs. Very important. A lot of people just do not realize how important that part is in that machine gun. And then my final talk about it is myself, Michael McCann, and a guy called Michael Ford were walking, or not walking patrol. So during the day, we would park the Casspirs up and try and stay out of the heat. We always parked them in all-round defense as such. And the troops would all sit there and talk BS and do the whole thing. So that day I said, come, let's go. And the three lieutenants, three of us walked out. Michael was the second lieutenant. Michael Ford was the second lieutenant. And me, and we walked down this pathway. And we're walking outside, checking the world out, looking for spoor and seeing what's going on. And the next thing, this tour comes bumbling down the path, probably about 250 meters away from us. But the path was veering quite far away. So I opened up on him with the R4. 3 rounds, didn't hit him. The bullets all hit branches and bits and pieces, and it was just out the way and gone. So the talk about the deflection is a very, very true part of it. But you've got to know what your rifle can do and how you can do it. And that's really all that it comes down to. For me, the teaching is the most important part. It's teaching guys how to do it properly the first time around, so that it instinctively becomes, this is what you do, this is how you do it. Those Recce instructors were brilliant. James Taker, Ray Godbeer, Wayne Ross Smith, all of those guys, they were brilliant. They really were, and they did a lot of that, especially with the young recruits who were doing Recce Selection. So you just learn and you keep on doing that. You teach your guys to reload and reload and reload magazines. It's just an important part of the world. So, Chris, that's about what I got for you. I mean, I think it should give you enough ammunition.
Well, I've got a lot of questions actually.
Carry on.
I'm fascinated between the Kufut and 101 battalion, because in the police, of course, Kufut was seen as the ultimate counterinsurgency, end of story. But they were also seen as very strange people, actually. They had their own ways about them, which didn't always go well with the colonels who were steeped into, may I say, the English army tradition. You know, they were very strict people in certain ways, and Kufut operate differently. I just spoke to somebody, and he actually started a contract with, which started the 9-day war. And he said to me they had 10 teams there called in to assist them, because there were just too many of these tours going on. And then he also said a very interesting thing, Classy, that's his name. He said this wasn't actually a Kufut battle, because that contract went on for 3-4 hours. And that is army stuff. And I fully understand what they mean by saying that. And I think you people also. Now, how long would the typical contract take place in time for 101?
So on average, your contact time would be less than 5 minutes as a norm, right? Very similar to what the Kufut guys had. You'd run them down, they'd be so tired at the end, and you just shot them dead and moved on. The point behind it was that we ended up conventional a lot of the time. And when you ended up in that conventional, and what he said is right, those 10 teams, and they're all mixed with Ratels. I know a little bit about the 9-day war. 101 kept on phoning me and saying, you need to come back and come in. No, I'm good. Thanks very much. I'm not coming to do that. But the 10 teams idea is exactly that. You end up that you got 40 Casspirs, and the big thing was that those swap boat tours were in groups of 200 to 300, and that's why you had to do that. If you had one team of 4 Casspirs, they'd have got wiped out, and that was a clever strategy. The second reason that they were like that the first couple of days was they didn't have any machine guns. They only had their R4s. They'd been disarmed by UNTAG and were not allowed to have. 101 battalion was gone. I mean, our Casspirs were standing parked somewhere ready to get put on trains when they called everybody back. And Ben Fanta, the captain who took over 903 from me, he said, he was the one on the radio and on the Vamba radio and everything. Right, come back, boys. We've got a scrap on. And that's basically what happened. So we'd been disarmed, and particularly Kufut had. And then luckily you had 6-1 mech guys around there as well. But again, their role is more conventional than counterinsurgency, where the Kufrit guys were brilliant at that, and so were the 101 guys. I mean, the 101 trackers were brilliant. I mean, I had a little fat guy called Oscar Kapunda in Romeo Mike 8, and we got the spur of a couple of tours one day. 66 kilometers that guy ran them down, and we killed him at the end of it. And this dude had 18 kids, you know, so it's just how it was. All right, did that answer that one?
Yeah, but you know what? You touched the walnut's nest here now, because the Kufri guys also said they were supremely puzzled by 6-1 Mac, because Kufri fought from their vehicles, their kara, we call it kara. They would not get down out of that vehicle unless they have to. And they said the 6-1 Mac guys were like totally weird. They would get out of their Ratels and just go in as infantry. Now I need to ask you, 101? Fighting from the vehicles or infantry or both?
From the vehicles. From the vehicles. The guys who are on foot with the trackers, they would melt out, and the vehicles would come in and do all the damage. The same thing happened in the east. When we went to the east, originally Commandant Hartsleeve said to us, "You guys are all infantry now." And we looked at him and laughed and said, "Really? We didn't even have helmets." He says, "Yeah, you guys must do company attacks." And no bullshit. We don't do that stuff. We fight out of Casspirs. That's how it is. So yeah, the 6-1 Mech, what the difference is, they are conventional soldiers. Roland de Vries did a brilliant job. He's written some magnificent books and he's a good guy. All right. But they have a place in war. When we were out at the Lomba, certain times they had a place, certain times they didn't. You know, when they were down in the farmlands at the bottom, when the first sort of areas attacks went on the farmers, 3 or 4 of the guys got killed, you know, again, because of this debusing out of the vehicles and all that sort of thing. You got to adapt your tactics. And that's one of the reasons I really wanted to go to 101, was because of the way they worked.
Now, also, the Kufrit guy says they had huge problems with their dikers. That is a Caspir with 5,000 liter water or diesel nozzle on top of it. They just couldn't keep up. They said it was too heavy. They couldn't keep up with the turbo Caspirs. And later, those other vehicles they had, which replaced the Caspirs. Yeah, the name escapes me. Wolf.
The Wolf.
The Wolf. Yeah, and there's a huge debate on which one of the two were the best, because they said the Wolf was too heavy and it would sink into sand, but then it had a very powerful main engine. Now, what I want to ask you, out of doing a thing between the two units, is could your Quaffles stay with you? Could they go with all the way with your Caspirs?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was an air-cooled Magirus Deutsch 352, 80E 352 engine, and they were damn good. You know, we didn't get the new ones. We got the old ones as well, so we would have the occasional problem with a few. Like when we were in the east, I had to bring back a whole lot of them that was sick, lame, and lazy. But it was a good vehicle. But we also didn't try and put 5,000 liters of diesel on it. We would, if we had to take diesel, we took a Queffel 100, a Queffel 100, you know, the armor-protected one, with 10,000 liters in it. And that thing had a V12 Magirus Deutsch engine. You didn't play games with that. He could keep up anywhere you wanted to.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But these support logistical vehicles were armed as well. They did have a machine gun there on them or
not? Sometimes we put an MAG on the top with the bicycle wheel, but generally it was just the driver and his number 2 and the R4s out the doors. And they would hang behind the Casspirs. So they learned how to just follow the spur, so they didn't really head into the contact. There was a few times that they did, but generally they wouldn't. They would hang back because of that reason. And also, they had 4 drums of diesel on them. They had 2 drums of Avtur on them. They had a diff for a Caspir front, diff for a Caspir rear, diff for a Queffel front, diff for a Queffel rear. All your ammo, all your rations, 5, 6, 7 weeks, whatever it was. All the troops' backpacks went in there. They didn't live inside the Caspirs.
That bicycle contraption for the machine gun, I just want to explain to people who might not know what you mean. It was on top of a turret to the side, to the left of the driver, and you had like handles, and then the LMG would shoot you on your head very inaccurately. And besides that, all the brass would come down on you. Man, you suffered down there. It was like being burnt. It was dreadful. I can quite understand why you got rid of it and put it right in front of let's call it a co-driver through the windscreen. I mean, that would have worked much better. And also, of course, at the back. Because you had superb views from there on the top, didn't you?
Yes, but the big thing behind it was that the guy was able to at least use a machine gun. You know, so if you got burnt a little bit, that was life. They were the original. I mean, Kufut also used the bicycle contraptions on the original Casspirs. So they'd have one MAG on top of it, and then the bicycle wheel inside with the two handles and what you did. But as it developed later on, I mean, the Querfels, if they'd used their brains eventually, which they didn't, we would have had window Brownings in them, for example. But that was just an afterthought, you know.
Was it possible with that Browning next to you, in the, let's say, the co-driver seat, to shoot your own bonnet? Not that it would matter, it's armored, but it couldn't bend down far enough?
No, couldn't do it. You had to lift that machine gun up so high to try and get it down, so no.
So what's the combat range of a typical 101 group team in terms of range of diesel? Because what I found is that the South African designed vehicles are much more able to go further on diesel than would be a European or American one because of tails. They have money and, you know, to do the logistic things. We don't.
So generally a Caspar on its 200-liter tank could do about 400 kilometers, 450 kilometers. But it also depended how thick the sand was and whether you were stopping and waiting to find spur and idling and all of that. I mean, Val and all the guys who were there before me and during the time I was there, they went right up to Kuvalai with those things. So you just learned. I mean, we got resupplied from the air quite frequently as well. Diesel.
Yeah, that's a good thing, actually. That's a good thing.
Yes.
But now may I ask you, how did you get those fuel from the drums into your vehicles? Because a Casspirs fuel cap is flipping 8 feet in the air.
Yeah, but you park the Querfel right next to it, and the Querfel's high enough, and you put the one drum on top of the other, and then you siphon it in with a hose pipe. You teach these guys, they go sucking the diesel. It's like, no, you blow the diesel, and then it'll come out. Oh, okay. It's like you try and teach these youngsters today about how you pour out of a jerry can. They haven't got a clue, man. They haven't got a clue. You don't ever pour it straight out where it goes glug glug. You turn it to the side and let it run so that it has air all the time.
Man, that's clever. That's clever. I do seem to remind myself of having a hand pump and about 10 constables doing a 200 of a pumps, and 3 hours later you're still only half full, you know.
Yep.
We never thought of it, but anyway. From a technical viewpoint, Peter, what oil did you use on your machine guns and other weapons? 3-in-1 or whatever you could find?
I can tell you right now that diesel is the best cleaning agent for machine guns. And the reason for this, South African diesel is 500 ppm sulfur. In America, it's only 50 ppm, so it doesn't work here. Right? So for cleaning, there was that. And then we would generally use SAE 30 or something like that. And example, most people don't understand that a machine gun, that piece of steel is moving up and down so fast, it's incredible. So for example, I would make my MAG gunners carry a gill bottle, those little gill bottles of shampoo with oil inside it. As soon as you hit the contact, first belt out, you pour oil in the top of it and it'll just carry on going.
There's a question which I really hope you can answer to me. I want to know, why is the mag gunners, the light machine gun gunners, always on the flanks when you walk a patrol? Why not up front?
The reason for it is so that you can flank the enemy. So what you do is, as you hit the main contact, your gunner and the number 2 will always move around to the side when they're told by the patrol commander, and they then give you the covering fire for you to go and attack them from the front.
Would 101 also be circling and mauling when they find the enemy shoot inside like a...
Yeah, very, very much. Happened in the east as well with the tanks. When you were running around and there were Casspirs driving around behind tanks trying to tell Ratels to shoot tanks out, it was like, oh man, crazy stuff. The general was, we didn't maul as much as what Kufut did, because for them the contact was so quick, so short and done. For us, we would end up sometimes in an extended line, and if you do that, then you try and do the maul, then you've got 14 Casspirs running into each other. It's just counterproductive, really.
I am told, and if I'm wrong, please, you people listening, tell me in a polite way. Because remember, if you make snot comments on legacy, I chase you away, man. I don't hesitate. We're all friends here. We're all comrades. We're all veterans, man. So anyway, they tell me that even to this very day, you can see where 101 or 61 Mag or Kufut team went through the bush. They say they just banged their way through. You can see the damage are still there. And I don't mind the damage. I'm not a greenie. I'm just trying to explain to you how these vehicles would be used.
You would see it, particularly if you had a convoy of a company. So if you looked at the photographs that Helmut Holmer Reitman put out of the east, the Lombo River, all those Ratel tracks, that gives you the idea. So you would bundabash the trees down, and then everybody else would follow behind that. You can see it, yes. It'll grow back eventually, but I mean, there's so much bush there, it doesn't make any difference. So for the greenies, they can keep themselves happy about that. We'll just buy Greta another cell phone or something.
Yeah, let's not go on to them. You know, they're actually classified as terrorists, by the way, by the FBI, these greenies. I wrote about it in a few books, much to their disgust. Now, you said the Bren was an extremely accurate rifle, and I recall some World War II veterans tell me, I was a child and they were still alive, but actually that was a damn problem, according to them, to these worms with a Bren. It was too accurate. They couldn't, according to them, shoot at lots of people at the same time. I'm not sure how I feel about that argument of them. How do you feel about it?
No, you just got to move the back of the machine gun left to right. That's basically it. So no, on that point of view, no, I don't think that's an accurate thing.
Yeah, I think they were having me on, man. I think they were having me on. You said you were making fires at night, the same as Kufut, begging, praying to be attacked. But were you actually attacked? Because Kufut says they were seldomly attacked. The terrorists were not that stupid.
No, they were very scared to come and do it because they knew that the next morning you'd pick their spoor up and within 20 kilometers you'd have them. So as a rule, not that I ever knew of, okay? But I'm pretty sure that it probably happened somewhere along the line. But you must remember, as the war progressed, the Typhoon tours got better and better and better. That day they killed McCann, those guys were so anti-vehicle armed, it was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. The one guy had 28 SKS rifle grenades for anti-tank on his webbing. Another one had a whole lot for AKs. There was RPG 75s, RPG 7s, you name it. They were just waiting for us to do that. So they would try and taunt you as well,
Yeah, that was the thing. I mean, if they could get you an ambush and shoot your vehicle out, then the fight is more equal.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's why the PKM is such a great machine gun, because of its armor-piercing bullets. I mean, that Caspir of McCann's, they shot the diff out, the transfer case out. There were bullet holes everywhere. There's just oil pouring out of it.
Am I right if I say the PKM, it's a machine gun? It uses what they call the Soviet 3006.
Yeah, 7.62 by 54 mil. That's the one. It's the same round as the Dragunov and the Gurunov. They all use that same round.
And it's good.
It's a very good round. Well, again, one of the reasons that the 303 was such a great rifle was the heavy bullet. So when you hit somebody, it dragged him down. Where with the 5.56, you shoot him, it goes through, it does massive damage, but you don't knock him down. That was the whole reason behind the 303 being such an effective weapon.
So this is all about firepower, isn't it? I mean, you mount the most heaviest and the mostest machine guns you can, even cannon if you can on that Caspir. And when your contact hits, you just open up and dent it.
Well, you shoot selectively as well. You don't want to just waste it. That's one of the things. The guys tried a lot of Hispano Suiza cannons. They tried AGS 17s, for example. There were different varieties of weapons that were put out, but it came down to the end where the 5.0 Browning and the 3.0 Browning were actually the better choice of the whole lot. So firepower, yes. It's a very big thing. I mean, the way we trained our guys, particularly when we were going into Angola and then into the east, was we did a thing called a viergordelatie, a 5-belt action. So you would drive down the road, everybody would swing left at the same time and just open up, and you have 14, 16, 18 vehicles just laying out 200 rounds out of each machine gun that they've got. I mean, the effect is super impressive.
How did you load these weapons, the tracer to ball? What's the ratio?
Generally the 4-to-1 principle. Generally. The problem with using tracer in Angola was you lit the bush on fire all the time, and that became an issue for you. But generally, it came already made of 4-to-1.
Okay, so tell me, there are people who say that the 5.0 Browning shoots a lot slower than, say, the 303 or the 7.62. But that's relative, man. That's relative, isn't it?
Yes, but the 5.0 Browning, you just got to adjust how your barrel click goes. That's all it is, nothing else. No, if you don't know how to do it properly, it doesn't work. So when I got to the East, I had Romeo Mikes 14 Caspir, and that thing, it had a trigger problem all the time. So you had to wiggle the trigger all the time to get it to shoot. But if you set that thing on to S for super, out it went.
Well, one of that battalion also the same as Kufut, where they would call a group after the first members. So you had like Zulu, Juliet, Zulu, Quebec, whatever.
No. The Romeo Mike companies were 901, 902, 903, 904. Each one had 4 teams. So you'd have Romeo Mike 1 to 4 in 901, Romeo Mike 5 to 8 in 902, 9 to 12 in 903, and then 904 was 13 to 16. And then your company commander had his call sign. So my call sign was Golf Bravo, Duval was Delta Whiskey, John Lamod was Papa Lima, Sace Prinsloo was Sierra Papa. And that was just done so you had a differentiation. It wasn't, 901, are you on the line?
Now, the 2 colonels, as you refer to them, wonderful chaps, by the way, they told me they had this little book as a non-commissioned officer, and then they would tick down, jump up and down and see if you're rattling before you go and patrol. Fill your water bottle. One guy made a comment there, and it's like, because I don't know the answer of that. He made a comment, okay, what do you do when your water bottle is half full? Are you going to start rattling now? How do you overcome this? Any suggestions?
You drink it all. That's it. Yeah, the whole thing behind it, that's for foot soldiering. So at the end of the day, if you're going out on a patrol, you don't want to be rattling and clanking and making a noise all the time. So the whole point behind the noise check is, 1, to check that you're not going to drop anything, but number 2, to check that you're not going to make a noise, like the MAG belts rattling against each other or anything like that. So yeah, when it comes to the water bottle, if it's half full, you empty it. That's it.
But water was actually a problem there. I mean, that's what the Casspirs had, I think, a 200-liter water tank on them as well. Were you using that, or were you using the ones on the Quail, or both?
No, we used the water in the Casspirs. That was all. I mean, if you go back to the East, Hotsleeve called us in after we'd been there for about 55 or 58 days and says, "You 101 officers stink. What's wrong with you lot?" I said, "No, we haven't had a bath yet." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because we never get the water bunkers. They arrive at us and we can fill our water tank and our water bottles, and that's it." "No, you better have a bath. Go to rivers." "No, there's crocodiles in there. Lots of them." And leeches.
Okay, but how would it work? I'm quite fascinated by this. How would it work before you go out on a patrol? And how long is this patrol anyway? Would you have like an order group so you know where you're going, and then it goes down? I'll say that Peter is nodding here in the background, but tell us, please, I want to know, and do you then line up the vehicles and do a quick inspection, or do you trust the men, the experienced fighters, they will do the right thing?
Your platoon sergeant does all of that for you at the beginning. So your team sergeant, he's the man who will check and make sure they've got all the ammo and all the rations and all the water and all the other things that you need. Yes, there are order groups. With the style of fighting that 101 did, you had order groups, yes. So if you're doing a proper attack, then you had a proper order group. That was, you sat down and you went right from admin, everything from the beginning to the end, commander, signals, admin, and log, you name it at the end. But as a norm, quick convoy orders were very simple to do and easy to do. And you'd already taught the guys when we went to the Pannetjiesvlaktes about the Veergordelaksie, what you had to do if you had to do a visgraad, fishbone to go under the trees if the MiGs were around, all that sort of thing. So it becomes instinctive. And as you're working with older soldiers, it's easier to do. The reason that the people like the Noddy Cars and 6-1 Mech and all of them do the style parade is to make sure that their guys have what they got. And I'll just give you an example. Right at the beginning of the border war, there was a guy who was supposed to carry a spare barrel, supposed to carry a Bren gun. And he walks around with the spare barrel sticking out his coat. And when they get back, he says, "Where's the Bren gun?" "Oh, no, it's in the base." So there's all that sort of thing. You got the Jippo Chata who do that stuff. So you got to check on it. But if you give a good set of orders, you can normally sort out what you need to. And the platoon sergeants, they were really good at that. In the RAR, for example, it was a platoon warrant officer who did that.
I must say that God will not have mercy on that fellow with his brain parole. God knows, I don't know if this actually happened or not, because there's lots of such rumors, but it happened to me once. I mean, I was 2 days in a patrol and the driver comes to me. But you know what, this guy was actually fantastic. He was a detective, an older guy. He served in Rhodesia in the Part 2 units. So he had on his camo, he had the Part 2 sticks, so I really looked up to him. I mean, this guy was like experienced. And he said to me, "Sergeant, I forgot my rifle at the camp." At the base, if it were full. So I just gave him my 9mm, and I said, "Well, I don't want to know, man. I'm just ignoring this. I don't want to know." But all sorts of things went through my head. I mean, but I was comms there, but your radio's up to scratch. Could you guys talk to each other and also air support and everyone?
Yeah, we had very good comms. We used the TR-48 hopper, and then we had the B-20 or B-53s, I think it was, mounted in the Casspirs, and we had antenna with blow coils and all sorts of things. So the comms were very good.
And your comms of a driver during a contact, what is that? A kick in the head to turn left and a kick on the other side of the head?
That's
you
it.
work that out?
No, you just tell him, ry links, ry rechts, or Coludio, Calamesho, or whatever it was. And if he didn't do it, you kicked him in the head and he knew that he had to go that side next. That was how it was.
I always ask the Kufoot members this, so I want to ask you as well. What is the record to change a Caspir wheel? A flat wheel which got shot out. How quick can you change that thing? Normal T, I just want to tell people, it's a flippin' heavy wheel. It's big. It is tightly
Probably around 15 minutes. Yeah, probably around 15 minutes. Yeah, what happens is when you have a lot of team members, they all just climb in and they know. So that day McCann was killed, they shot both of my spare wheels out on the back of my Caspir. Both of them. Luckily, I didn't shoot any of my wheels out, but the back 2 wheels were gone. And when I got there to go and drop McCann's body at the chopper pad and Mark Suter, they basically ripped them off, sorted them out, put them back on, and off we went again to go back to the contact.
What's the effect of that, of having to carry your own dead back to the chopper pad of a base? I mean, do the guys have time to think about it, or do they think about it later?
They think about it later. But you must remember that the Ovambos were very rural people, all right? And for them, life and death is no issue. So when we got McCann back to the chopper pad and we put him down on the floor onto the ground sheets, the troops were already stripping his boots off and everything else. And Michael Ford went apeshit. He just like, "You bum, get the you lot there, get away from him and leave him alone." That's just how life is. It's, in that situation, that's what you have.
Yeah, I know that with the cavalry guys, they had the same problem. I mean, a horse would get shot or executed because it broke a leg, and then the Wombos, the local guys just want to eat it. And they were like, "Man, it's like eating your police dog. You can't do that." I mean, but it's different cultures. I mean, we have to understand it. It's not the same. It's not the same everywhere. No, I just want to say to you at the end, I'm really grateful you clarified that mag story with the Rhodesians, because there was quite a bit of feeling about that. These mags can be used against us. So I'm glad you cleared that up. And then lastly, I want to ask you, when you were ambushing those MiGs and Sukhois there with your burning tires, did you ever get anyone? Did you ever get one?
No, we would have got closer if we'd had SAM 7s at the Lomba. But they did come flying by, but they also knew to stay way above I think the SAM's effective height is 7,000 meters, somewhere effective range. So they always stayed at 10,000, whatever happened. So they'd fly by, you could hear them and you could see them in the sky, but no, personally, I didn't have any. The other guys maybe, but I don't think we ever shot down a MiG.
I heard that they were tracking you, the Casspirs, on radar. I had a Kufut member with us once on a range, and one of the mirages or something came through the clouds. And this guy just, man, he wasn't waiting. He was going down and he was just moving away, and he was grabbing me with no clue what he was doing. In fact, I thought he was trying to assault me in a very strange way. And then he sat down and he smoked a cigarette. He says, Chris, no, we know those MiGs track you through the clouds, man. You hear that thing, the bombs are already dropping and you got to run. True? Or was he taking me for
They didn't track us. They could see us from the tracks that we made. So, you know, one of the things that a lot of white people don't understand about fighting in a bush war is that when there's a broken tree stump, it's white. There's nothing white in the bush. So when you look from the air, you will see broken pieces and it's all white all the time. That's how they pick you up. So when we were in the east, we had that, they would follow us because they could see the spur. You know, there were like 40 vehicles driving on the same spur. So it was easy to pick us up. It's just if your camouflage was good, they couldn't find exactly where you were. Except the one day when me and Duval and the troops were sitting there, and it was a Su-22 pilot, and he had a red star on this helmet. And we were sitting around the Casspirs, and that night we decided we're not digging trenches. This is a pain in the ass. We've been doing this for far too long. So we're sitting all talking BS at the back end of the Casspir. And the next minute the MiG goes by, and then we hear him coming back. And it's like, oh shit, boys, you better run. And about 70 meters away, 500-pound bomb dropped near us. So they tracked us through our own, let me put it as not stupidity, but our own vehicle movements and all that. That was how they did it.
Yeah, you're quite right about that, because I spoke to some of the Recces, and they said this Dayglow story didn't work as well as white. They could just use the back of their maps, and the Impala pilots would pick them up at 12,000-15,000 feet. Amazing.
Yeah, well, in Rhodesia, when they went on the externals, that was how they were able to pick up where the camps were. Through the radar photographs, there were suddenly these patches with whole white dots all over the place. And that made it easy to suddenly, oh, okay, look here. And then you started to see the trench formations and all that.
Looking back now, what was the major difference between the Rhodesian Army and the South African one?
The South Africans had far more resources, and the South Africans were very much more conventional as an army, right? Where the Rhodesians learned to adapt. They learned right at the beginning. So the police were the first guys into the war, and they went on, and then suddenly they realized at that first contact in 1966 or whatever it was, they suddenly realized, wow, we're far out of our depth. We need the military to do that. I think that the main difference between the Rhodesian Army and the South African Army was how the leader group were trained. So for me, I believe they did a great job of training the young leaders, but they didn't do enough to help them be super officers. They were super soldiers, but not super officers, where in Rhodesia, their whole scheme was you are going to be the best that you can for those troops so that you can lead them and show them what to do and how you do it. And that for me was a very big differentiation. The Recces was different. Recces had a very good setup and a good training program and a good way of doing things. The regular army was slightly different, you know. I mean, when I trained that last company at 121 Battalion, we had to do mine soeksteek drills to look for mines. And like, come on, guys, you know, then you're going to put this orange flag out and then do the next thing and the next one. And if the guy put the soeksteek in at the wrong angle, you failed. Like, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I asked the generals here at the SADF often whether they actually cared for their people or not, and they all are very adamant they did. I mean, they did care for them. But sometimes an officer to me was a very aloof thing. It was quite unapproachable. Is that what you mean? Would you be able to Was the Rhodesian style more like the Israeli one, a bit more informal perhaps?
More informal, I would agree with that. I think that your officers were very approachable because you worked in 4-man sticks. You must remember in South Africa, minimum was 10 guys in a section. And then when things got really bad, they were walking in platoon patrols. So you had 34 people. That's the difference between it. One of the problems, I believe, South Africa-wise, and I'm not an expert on it, okay? I just observed certain things, was that before the Second World War, a lot of civil service guys were drafted into the military to boost the military numbers. And that, I think, is where one of the problems came from. The second thing is that if you are aloof, so one of the things in the RAR, for example, the soldiers would test you. You got a nickname, and it was only after you got a nickname and you were accepted would they actually listen to what you wanted. Otherwise, they would do everything the platoon warrant officer did. So it was a very different intimacy in terms of how that worked. 101 was very good in that term. Your officers, corporals, lieutenants, colonels, it didn't matter who you were. You could fight, you could fight. That's all they wanted to know about. In the regular army, the whole discipline thing comes in, and there's a very staid regimental procedure, you know.
Well, it's true what you say, because I believe here by 1961, the early 60s, the South African Army went nuts, politically wise. Not the soldiers themselves, I mean the guys from the top. Yeah. Where they got these ranks of Veldkornet and God knows what else. And they got rid of all the World War II experienced officers simply because they were English. Tough thing for me to say, but that's exactly what happened. And they lost that expertise. Because once these guys went, they went.
Yeah, look, when we came to South Africa from Rhodesia, it was also a very difficult thing. We were all regarded as the enemy, you know, speaking the tale of the devil and all these other things along the way. But you learn to overcome and you learn to mix in and do. There are some bad Rhodesians as well, same as there's some bad South Africans. You know, at the end of the day, that's just how life is. But at the end of it, I think one of the things that really got me was how much in the Rhodesian Army they taught us to care for our troops. So I was reading a thing, a friend of mine, Captain Russell Fulton, who was at 3RAR with me and then at Zimbabwe Military Academy. He's in Australia now. He writes a whole lot of things about the RAR and about the awards, the bravery awards and all that. And he was writing today about his platoon warrant officer, well, the company sergeant major, actually. And when he got to RAR, they made him go and meet everybody. And the CSM was in his store, and he made sure that he was, yes, sir, how are you, and all that. And 2 days later, the CSM asked, no, can I go on patrol with Lieutenant Fulton? And of course, the captain was like, okay, yeah. And Fulton was dead terrified. Now you got a 15-year-old veteran who's coming on a patrol with you, who's going to check you out and see what you're doing and where it went. Long story short, this particular guy was a goot magnet. And apparently the first 2 weeks that they were out, they killed 7 tours. Now in Rhodesia, that was pretty good odds, and captured 2 and all that. And on one of the contacts, the PWO or the CSM, the company sergeant major, had shot one of the tours with a 42 Zulu rifle grenade in the back. So Russell says to him, so why did you use that? He says, if it's a big terrorist, you use a big stick. So Russell then wrote that. So what happened was they got back after the 2-week deployment, and the next minute, the company sergeant major walks into Russell's office, bangs his heel in, salutes him smartly and all the rest, and he says, sir, Somabula, which is the name of your platoon, readily accept you. You are now one of them. You can tell them what to do. And that's how it worked. And a lot of that happened, not so much radically like that in 101, but a very similar sort of thing. Once they saw that you were capable, you were like gold to them.
Was that the same in the Zulu battalion, 1-to-1?
Yes, to a large degree. My name in 1-to-1 was Somabula, which is the man who does things himself, because I wouldn't trust anybody to make sure it was right.
I thoroughly enjoyed this, man. I really appreciate it. I think we're going to call you back for a few things. I've got quite a few ideas still. So thank you for your time, and enjoy your time where you live, where you can have as much weapons as you please. I always found that a fascinating place. I mean, it's worth your while to just go there just for that, man. It's a pity I'm banned in that country. I would have had a collection. But thanks.
Thank you so much
Appreciate it.
as well. Yeah, I really appreciate it as well. And I'll do more if you want to talk more about weapons or one of the things that we did on our cadet course in Rhodesia was we were the first cadet course that had T-55 tanks. So when we did our classical war exercise, we did a full company or full battalion attack with 2 squadrons of T-55 tanks. So yeah, we had a lot of good experiences.
Yeah, we would love to hear all of them because there's a story where you got those T-55 tanks from as well, which is a very, very good story. I think me and Tony Bellinger, we spoke about that briefly, but we can speak about that. No, you're always welcome, Peter. And
The one guy from our cadet course, he went and became the troop commander for the T-55s.
Well, I hope we can get hold of him as well. That would be great.
I don't know if he'll talk, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Anyway,
Because I
thank you.
know there was a problem with those tanks also. They painted them a wrong color or something. Something about infrared and the color they painted them or the paint they used. I don't know if that's true. That's what we heard.
Something to do with it. That's one of the reasons it got picked up in the harbor. Was the wrong colors of the tanks, and then also one of them where the canvas had blown off on the corner, and it was like, oh wow, look what's under here.
Yeah.
So what they got 10 of them. South Africans kept 2 and sent us 8.
And one of them is actually standing there at the War Museum in Saxonwold. You can actually go and look at it. I sat on one on it. Amazing vehicle, very, very good. It's an impressive looking tank. But we have to stop talking now. Sadly, so, my man. So as we say here at Legacy, God bless you all until we meet again.
Thanks, Chris. Be good. Have a good day. See you.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to receive notifications.